Testing, testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. Can the audio pick us up?
No, you could be in the band.
When you speak, the microphone swing. So just speak into the microphone. That way,
Look at that.
It's the recording of the presentation will be a lot better.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Angel Sepulveda, Communications Director for Alianza Center. Tonight, again, another forum, another week, another great opportunity to get to know political candidates in our community. This time, we have some candidates for Osceola school districts, a few districts that we're going to get into. But before that, we're grateful to Florida Technical College for hosting us every week over and over here in Kissimmee and in Orlando. And I want to bring the executive director of FTC at Kissimmee, Martin Levert, to say a few words. Martin, please.
All right. Well, good evening. Welcome back to some of you, and welcome for the first time. Once again, I'm very grateful that, I can partner with Alianza and have you guys here at the campus. I think it's a great experience for our students that are walking by to see what we do in terms of supporting the community. This is a big deal for me because we're talking about Osceola. And right now, this college is the largest technical college in the state, and we're right here in Osceola. So we have over 1,400 students here. So I think over 50% of the students that attend courses here have graduated from the school system here in the K through 12 here in Osceola County. So I look forward to this forum. I look forward to the answers that you guys bring to the table, and I look forward to the future of an even better and more, a more efficient Osceola County. So welcome to Kissimmee Campus, Florida Technical.
Thank you, Martin. And it's education, what we're going to be talking about tonight. So maybe some of your students are going to end up studying here as well. So that is a great thing to know. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you our executive director and founder of Alianza Center and Alianza for Progress, Mr. Marcos Vilar.
Thank you, Angel. First of all, like Angel said, my name is Marcos Vilar. I'm the founder and executive director of Alianza for Progress. Alianza for Progress seeks to unite the Puerto Rican and Hispanic populations in Florida and develop leaders from within our community that will support progress for all of us and a better quality of life for all our neighbors. Our commitment to establishing genuine relationships with the Puerto Rican and Latino community, its leaders, and its allies drives us every day to improve the position of our working families here in Central Florida. Our grassroots efforts with the Hispanic community, respecting and honoring our unique cultures and traditions, seeks to build a long-lasting, powerful economic, social, environmental progress for all of us that live here in Central Florida. So today, we welcome the candidates for school board in Osceola County. We have candidates from 2 districts, District 2 and District 5. Their names are Julius Melendez, over at the end. We have Dylan Renzel, Betsaida Garcia, and Mr. Brian Bennett. Welcome, all of you, for being here. Thank you for being here. We have one other candidate who may come join us at some point, Paula Bronson, but for now, these are the ones that are here at the beginning of the debate, so thank you for all of you for being here on time. Let me go a little bit over the rules of the forum. You will each have 2 minutes to have an opening statement. And at the end, you will also have an additional 2 minutes to do a closing statement. Other than that, when we do ask the questions, we ask you to keep your questions to 1.5 minutes. We have several candidates here today, and we want everyone to be able to get their word in. We will be asking questions in different categories. If you've seen any of our debates in the past, once we finish the one category, we open it for questions either in the audience here with us tonight, or someone perhaps online has posted a question, and we'll go to those questions at the end of each section. And at the end of the entire forum, probably right before you do your final closing statements, we will open it up for the audience to ask any question that wasn't perhaps included in the categories that we thought were important. Obviously, we create our questions based on the priorities of us as an organization and of our allies and partners in the community. So we talk about a lot of the issues that are important to us, but we also want to give this forum the opportunity for people outside of Alianza Circle to also come in and ask their questions. So we'll have an opportunity for that as well. In terms of personal references and attacks, that's not cool with us here. We believe in civil discourse. We believe in all of us having different opinions on different subjects. And so we ask that you talk about your politics, what you stand for. You can get a little bit into what you don't stand for, but try to keep your statements as close to what you believe in is best for the Osceola County public school system, school district. To the audience, I'd like to ask everyone to keep their cell phones without a volume, so that we don't have any ringing or beeping during the event. We request that you all treat the candidates fairly, so no hostile questions. Please remain quiet throughout the forum. Try not to clap. Sometimes they say really good things, and you can't help yourself. But try to keep that to the minimum so that we can keep the time going. We do not allow campaign literature or signs in the room. And then the questions must be addressed to all candidates. So if you ask a question, all the other candidates have if they're addressed to one individual, all the other candidates also have a chance to respond to your questions. In order to ask a question, just ask your hand, or if you're watching us online, simply type a question into the chat. And we have people here who will be monitoring the chat, and we will be able to share your question directly with me up here, and then we'll ask that question to the panel. So with no further ado, I think we're ready to get started. Welcome everyone. Special thanks to all of those who are watching online. Our first area of topic is going to be resilience, climate change, and sustainability. However, I did want to start with a little bit of good news that's off topic, and that is I recently read that Osceola schools have improved their academic performance. You know, that's on the record, and so we should all celebrate that. Given that, what steps? The question is, given that, what steps would you encourage to continue this upward trajectory? And we can start at either. I'm sorry, the opening statement.
Opening statements.
Yeah. I'm online. I'm sorry. I skipped the opening statements. I want to get straight into the questions, but let's start with opening statements. We can do it starting with you, Mr. Melendez, or we can start with Mr. Brian Bennett.
Julius, go
either
ahead.
way, the rule is whoever starts, then will be the
Rotate.
last at the end.
I got you.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Marcos. Thank you, FTC, for hosting this event. Thank you for Alianza for really putting this together, because I think it's really important for the people to be informed about their candidates when they make a decision, when they vote. But it's been an absolute honor to be your school board member for the past 4 years. And it hasn't been easy. I tell you right now, when folks like Dylan, who's a teacher himself, during spring break, you're on vacation, you're away, sailing away on your boat, if you're just enjoying life, they told you that this pandemic was hitting hard. Everybody had to come back and reinvent the way they do business. Everyone had to go online, get devices one-to-one. Our IT department had to clear out viruses and get everything ready. We had to procure things. We had to keep the curriculum going. We had a serious mental health crisis. When students came out, they got scared. They're like, what is this pandemic? I remember going to, wearing masks every day and going to Home Depot for the first time. Everyone was like, this is the end of the world. It felt like it. And for the school district to be able to respond so eloquently, I cannot give my hats off to every single person that did that. Because I tell you right now, it's been a challenge, because not only did we had to do with the pandemic, when things cleared up, we had the state of Florida attacking us too. We had all these bills from the legislature. We had all these restrictions, all these requirements, all these testings. At one point, they even challenged the school board itself and was like, well, we're going to put term limits on you. We want to make it a partisan race. We want to take away your salary. There was just a complete, utter assault on education all at once. So thankfully, the federal government, including the leadership of Congressman Darren Soto, was able to get federal stimulus dollars to help smooth that out. Because I tell you right now, without that funding piece in place, it would have been extremely difficult for the school district to operate as business as usual. We would have to have done so many extreme measures to be able to deal with that. But again, I just cannot thank every single teacher for doing that. my son had to deal with it too, and we had choices of whether to do online, to do a hybrid option, or to do things on class. And so I just really want to thank all the teachers that show tremendous resiliency, and that's the same type of resiliency I have shown as a school board member and want to lead moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Melendez. Next, we'll have Mr. Dylan Rensel.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Dylan Rensel, and I am running for the District 5 seat on the Osceola County School Board. The most important thing about me really is that I am a husband and a father. My wife is a first grade teacher in Osceola County. My daughter is about to turn 2 years old next month. And I think becoming a father has really ignited a sense of urgency in me that we have to do what we can do here in the present to make sure that our future is better for our kids. And we're going to encounter a lot of challenges along the way. As Mr. Melendez says, you never know what's going to happen. And we need to make sure that we have competent people who understand the education system sitting on our school board. So what I've been doing recently is I am a teacher at St. Cloud High. I teach U.S. history and I teach U.S. government. I've been at St. Cloud High School this will be my 7th year, and I've been in education for 10 years. And I've been a coach throughout my career. I am a union representative. I am on the district bargaining team, so I help negotiate the contracts. And within all of those capacities, I've seen a lot of opportunities for growth in our district. And I've gotten to have the privilege of getting to learn about the intricacies and the complexities of our school district budget and all of the things that our school district does. We have over 8,000 employees and over 70,000 students and over a $2 billion budget. That is a very, very big responsibility. And it's not one that anyone should take lightly. And it's not one that I would take lightly if the voters would give me the privilege of being the next District 5 school board member. Thank you.
Ms. Betsaida Garcia. You're next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Betsaida Garcia. I am running for Osceola School Board, District 2. I want people to know that I have a master's degree in education and also school counseling. My bachelor's degree is in education and social work. I used to work for DCF, Department of Children and Family, and that gave me that broad experience of how all these social and economic problems that we have affect our students whenever they come to schools. I have a long life experience with education, and I want to use that to serve on the school board. My priorities, I have one of them is safety and security. I have the privilege of working with a national organization that we work all the mass shootings around the states. And I've seen all the sadness that all these mass shootings are bringing to our campuses. I work with the Uvalde, I work with the Parkland families, and also Pulse, the families locally that were affected with that. And I've seen that how it's been extended to our schools. So now that we have to include and extend our safety, and that's why I say this is my priority. In addition to that, increase the salaries of our classroom teachers. I used to be a special ed teacher, teaching special needs students, and I remember taking from here and there, trying to make my class complete with the supplies that were needed. Mi nombre es Betsaida García, soy maestra, fui maestra de educación especial y también estoy haciendo esto porque tengo un 76% de mi población habla español y pues estoy representándolos y quiero representarlos en la parte de educación y hacerlo de forma íntegra y de la forma en que lo estoy haciendo para todos ustedes.
Gracias, muchas gracias. And our next presenter tonight is going to be Mr. Brian Bennett. Mr. Brian.
Hi, my name's Brian Bennett, and I'm a candidate running for District 5. The reason that I'm running is because I'm a father. I've got 2 boys, both of whom attend school here in Osceola County. My younger son is mentally handicapped, and I've worked with the school and I've worked with the district in trying to provide services and meet his needs. And the school has failed on every level for him. And when I sit down and talk to other families that are in a marginalized community like the ESE students, I find that it's not a situation that's unique to me. It's something that happens pervasively across the district. They just don't attend to the safety and the needs of these children. If I can't get my son back from school with his shoes on the right feet when he's nonverbal, there's definitely things that are going on wrong that the school's not telling me about. From a business perspective, I've worked in planning and budgeting for a large company for multiple years, and being able to step in and take a look at a $2.1 billion budget is not something that seems daunting to me. It's in line with what I actually do for a living, and so I'd like to be able to use those skills to hold the district accountable to the money that they're spending for individual students, and making sure that it goes to the right locations for these kids.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. So then, like we said before, we were talking about the good news that Osceola has in fact improved in their scores as a district, and so there must be some things that are going in the right direction. What are the things that we should keep doing, and are there any fresh ideas in order to continue that momentum forward here in Osceola County? And we'll start this time with Mr. Renzel.
Yeah, so first off, I just want to congratulate my fellow educators in Osceola County for a job well done last year. I think we're still kind of bouncing back from what we call the COVID slide, and I think we're starting to see all of the work that we put in since then come to fruition, so very happy about that. I think the main thing that we have to make sure that we do is focus on the students, not the scores, because we sometimes get a little bit too wrapped up in what the numbers are. And those numbers are just numbers on a paper unless you humanize them and you make sure that you know that that B might have been, the B for a B that a student got might have been the best thing that's ever happened to that student. And that looks good for the school, but that could be a transformative event in a student's life. I talk to my students a lot about the intangible things that they'll get from education. And my AP students kind of roll their eyes when I say something like the pursuit of the A is more important than the A itself, which means that we should make sure that we are understanding what the journey is, not just the destination. And I think one of the things that I would push for is a reduction in the amount of assessments that we're actually doing. And it's a simple equation. If we are assessing more, we are instructing less. There's only so many days in a school year. If we're constantly testing, we're constantly just always focused on test. We're not addressing the individual needs of students all the time. And we can't do anything about, obviously, large state tests and things of that nature. But there has been an influx of district mandated assessments that I think is adding insult to injury to that idea that we need to make sure that we're instructing our students, not just constantly assessing. So something that I believe in is that we need to be more in tune with creating success than measuring it. And not everything the education system does is measurable. So we need to be able to acknowledge those things.
Thank you, Mr. Renzo. Ms. Garcia?
I agree with what he said, and actually that was a question we have today in the Sentinel interview. I say that we should not focus in the grade. It's just in the individual. Every kid has a need. Every kid, we don't know the struggles. Some of those kids, some of our kids, they're coming from houses that probably foster homes that we don't know the background. And sometimes when we focus in just that grade, we're omitting and kind of like not paying attention to these other needs that when we go and as a teacher, and he knows when we're in the classroom and we understand. I used to have students that they were coming from foster homes. And whenever they came to my classroom, they used to say, "Oh, Ms. Garcia, this is the only place that I find peace." So they're looking for something else. And we have to provide not just the education portion, but also that other part for the mental health, the psychology, these social things. It complements everything that we have to do to approach them. Entiendo que nuestros niños no solamente debe ser un grado. El grado es importante, pero debemos ir a donde los individuos, debemos tratar a cada niño de acuerdo a sus necesidades. Nuestros niños tienen necesidades psicológicas, tienen necesidades sociales, puede ser que vengan de hogares que están viviendo en hogares de crianza y tenemos que proveerles a estos niños también cubrir esas necesidades. Y tiene que ser un programa holístico, donde tenemos recursos de afuera, también recursos de la comunidad, recursos internos para poder cubrir esas necesidades de nuestros niños.
Gracias, Ms. Garcia. The next speaker will be Mr. Brian Bennett.
Yeah, I think, I think it's great performance that the school has shown. It helps drive home the fact that they can teach to a test. What I think we need to be measuring is whether our kids are prepared to move on in life. The high school experience is very important for them to gain knowledge, but they have to be able to function outside of the high school once they graduate. And, I think to Mr. Rensel's point, there needs to be less education or less evaluation and more education that's going into the classroom. But that education to be broadened more than what it is currently. So the school used to have technical programs that were in place for construction and for electrical and for plumbing. And those have largely been removed from the schools, and they still have some vet tech programs over at Harmony, but everything else they've moved over to Neo City High School. And if we take a look at whether the school is helping prepare our children, I would say that they are not doing everything that they could today. And again, with a $2.1 billion budget, we should be allocating those monies more towards additional programs, not just focusing on building schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Melendez.
Thank you. It's kind of like Mr. Renzel said, I really want to thank all the hardworking certified teachers that make that academic gain for those students, which is the biggest issue that we've had. After the pandemic, part of the learning deficit was that so many teachers left the profession and we had so many vacancies. It is difficult for a permanent substitute or for a paraprofessional to be in a classroom and give that full instruction to that student to move them to the next level. So that's how come at the time we were so desperate that we actually recruited like international agencies to bring in teachers to fill the vacancies. We were hiring Kelly Services as a substitute to kind of take over that department. So I really think that we've been focusing so much. We even went to Puerto Rico and recruited teachers to come down because they were certified teachers that kind of knew the culture, knew the language, and was able to assimilate these students a lot faster. But at the end of the day, we cannot keep up with the growth. And look at the county commission. They keep building housing communities after housing subdivisions. And the reality is right now we're building 3 or 4 new schools right now. And so if we have a vacancy, and all of a sudden we have to build 5 new schools, well, and guess what? Now we have the vacancy multiplied by 30 teachers in each school that they have to have as a minimum. So we are really behind the curveball on that. That's how come I was working at school board workshops to have an interlocal agreement with the county, because the prior attorney tried to say there is no concurrency. Well, the state got rid of the mandate of concurrency, but they allowed you to get into a voluntary agreement with the county to try to control that growth so it wouldn't happen so fast. And that's a problem. If you don't have a certified teacher in the classroom to move those lowest quartile students, because that's another issue too. Everyone could be reading at grade level, but your lowest quartile got to get moving up. You can't have a brand new teacher that never taught before moving those bottom kids that have the most difficult challenges. So we have to keep recruiting and retaining the top tier teachers that are certified to be able to move us forward. And we have to work with the county to let them know, hey, school districts can't provide the high quality education that our parents expect when we are growing way too fast.
Thank you, Mr. Melendez. I think is that everybody got a turn, right?
Yes.
This round? Perfect. So we're gonna now move to, like I said earlier, climate, clean energy, and sustainability. And in that, I wanna talk a little bit about our own involvement in schools. We were, as you know, or you may know, Alianza works very heavily in Orange and Osceola counties, both of the counties. And we also stretch in some programs all the way across the I-4 corridor. So we have a pretty big footprint in the region. But one of the things that we love the most is working with youth. And one of the programs that we began was at Roberto Clemente Community Middle School, which is in Azalea Park. And there we established a project that was called the Wetland Ambassadors. And we had students from the school go and test the water. It was there was a lot of science in it, but there's also a lot of conservation and observation and learning about nature. Osceola County has a really, really rich environmental situation, right? With all the lakes and all the wetlands here as well. I'd like to talk a little bit about that and about your ideas of how nonprofits like ours can work closer with a school or the school district here in Osceola County and replicate some of the good work that we've done there in Roberto Clemente. But before you answer, I want to also take credit for the fact that we also worked really hard to rename the school. As you know, it was called Stonewall Jackson before it was called Roberto Clemente, and we were our staff and our community was very much involved in renaming the school. So the question is, how do you see the involvement of the schools in the development, right, of a conscience around taking care of our environment, being ambassadors and stewards of our natural resources in such a rich and natural environment like Kissimmee and Osceola County, entire county, is a very natural and important habitat. It's where the Everglades are born, really, for all intents and purposes. So we were going to start with Betsaida Garcia.
First, thank you for doing what you're doing with the youth and the program and the extension that you already extended. I'll say that for our youth, every program like that, it represents that we're preparing them for the future. That will build character, because that's building character, what the program per se. And I see that a great opportunity here. We have so many parks and we have conservation areas that the county has and own, that I think it will be fantastic for that partnership. I can't talk about on behalf of the county, but I think the schools, the resources that we have, it can be integrated with our classes, science classes, to see all the things that can be useful and get those youth busy. We have to keep them out of the school. We have to keep them busy. And those are the programs that we need. And lo digo en español ahora para el 76% de mis constituyentes. Entiendo que es un programa excelente. Les felicito por lo que están haciendo. Aquí los recursos naturales son increíbles en el condado de Osceola. Tenemos parques, tenemos lo que es el área de aguas, los lagos, áreas que todavía es mucho tierra que tenemos en el área de San Cloud, que podemos hacer esos programas ser muy exitosos, y también eso mantiene a nuestros estudiantes ocupados fuera de los horarios de escuela, que es lo que estamos tratando de hacer para que tenerlos ocupados. Es que hacen, se meten en menos problemas. Así que vamos a hacer de esos programas lo que se puede hacer, y yo como board member, si logro llegar ahí, pues con mucho gusto me encantaría trabajar con el programa.
Gracias, Ms. Garcia. Mr. Bennett?
I can think back to when I was in school, and some of the most impactful lessons that I learned were from very engaging biology teachers and science teachers who knew how to make this come alive for us, whether it was, setting up terrarium or watching seeds grow or raising chickens in the classroom. Those were all lessons that have stuck with me for my entire life. And I think, again, if we're trying to engage students in environmental causes, I think we have to do some incentivization to the teachers who can develop those curriculums. And when we find a curriculum that is really engaging and inspiring to students, I think we need to spread that more broadly through the school. And allow those teachers to share those experiences with more students. Nothing beats hands-on education. It just doesn't. So if we can garner some of that interest very early in their lives and have it be something that that really captivates their minds, then we'll be able to advance some of those issues further.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. And the last one to answer this question, Mr. Melendez.
Yes, I think Dylan.
Yeah,
feels right.
I'll go after.
Oh, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
right.
Yeah, it's great.
Yes, we actually have the Poinciana Environmental Center. The school district actually owns the lands, and we coordinate multiple field trips out there. And so it's like, we watch those TV shows, those documentaries, they are really excited because we have full-time staff that actually work at the environmental center. So when the students go there, they teach them the different natures, the species of animals and birds and things like that that are natural habitats and species of that. So that is something that we're currently doing. We also do trips at Shingle Creek. We also look at our heritage at Parton. We have like the Parton Heritage Farm out there on the west side in District 1, because I'm in District 2, but I still try to be a board member for all the districts. And I think that's important, that whenever there's an issue in other areas, that I'm there to address them as well. You know, 'cause at the end of the day, when we vote as a school board, it's the entire Osceola County. We can't have tunnel vision and say, hey, I'm only representing District 2. So the other thing that we do as well is at Neo City, we were one of the first schools to have zero emission, as far as we have solar panels that were installed on the top of that. And so we won so many awards for being so environmentally conscious of how we build our new structures moving forward. I know it was a little bit of an expense up front, but if you look at the operational costs, when you have solar panels, it goes down significantly. The other thing I was willing to try too was looking at school buses that were electric, because we had multiple folks, and I think even Alianza was promoting an initiative to do that. But the only issue with that, because I like to be very upfront with folks, is the issue is the recharging of it. A lot of these buses take, 7-8 hours to recharge, and that's not always convenient, because we have different bus barns. Because a bus driver leaves and takes it to the main central district, they can't afford to let it wait 8 hours before they bring it back to their bus barn back at the local area where it's at, because we have a bus barn on the west side and on the east side of town. So again, this is like an all-in-one approach. We're dealing with the best that we can. So maybe we're working with hybrid buses now. So if we can't go fully electric, let the technology and the batteries get better, so that way we can maintain and sustain ourselves, not only for the students, but let the district leadership lead by example and be great role models as well.
Thank you, Mr. Melendez. Mr. Renzel.
Yeah, so first I want to say I agree with Mr. Bennett when he was talking about vocational training and technical training, and this kind of fits into that, because there's so many things that we could do as far as integrating things with science and technology and environmental aspects to make sure that our students are getting more than just what's on a standardized test. And I think part of what we have to understand with anything that's like a big problem like climate change, or just making sure that we are cognizant of environmental conservation, is that we all have an individual responsibility to do the little things every single day. So it's a matter of, I'm walking across campus and students are at lunch, and they leave their tray there on the ground. I see it all the time. Unfortunately, their bag of Doritos, they just throw it on the ground. And it's like, it's your responsibility to throw that in the trash. It's not somebody else's responsibility to come and do that. So just instilling those types of things. And that's something that growing up, I was always taught by my parents and my grandparents, is that you leave something better than you found it. And I think we all have a responsibility to make sure that we're doing that. And there are tons of opportunities to make sure that we're engaging our student body in nonprofit organizations as well, and at least allowing them to know that they exist, something that maybe they can do for their volunteer hours, or something they can do after they leave high school, and get networking and meet people that are out there making a difference. And we have to make sure that they're understanding that those things exist, and that it's their responsibility to try to make this world better.
Thank you. And you all touched on some things that actually sort of preempted my next question. It's a lightning round question, but before I ask the question, I want to talk a little bit about something that happened this year in our summer camp with the kids in the camp, and it has to do with food, because a lot of people don't know the relationship between food and decomposing food and methane and the quality of food. Kids always complain about the school lunches, right? They're cold, or they're prepackaged, and the quality of the school lunches are just pretty. And coming from Puerto Rico, I was raised in Puerto Rico, but we were served rice and beans and meat at the school, a glass of milk, and it was a meal. And so when we came here to the United States, and you get just these sort of prepackaged food that is like mass produced and shipped in a truck and put in a cooler or whatever. a lot of that food ends up in the garbage, and then it goes to the garbage to the dump, and in the dump it produces methane gas, which is a cause also of the increase in temperature in the planet. And you multiply that school by school, district by district, and that's a huge amount of methane being produced by the waste that's going on by the food not being consumed. So long story short, just wanted to share what we did was we switched and we got a chef, and then everybody ate all their food. Everybody ate all their food. And it cost us a little bit more to do it, but the children were really, really happy. One, their stomachs were full. They were well nourished. It was a healthy meal, prepared warm right there at the camp, and there was no waste. After every day, there was no waste. So we can pay a little bit more, make it better, and create less waste. Let's do it. Let's do something like that, right? So just giving you a little idea there, we have this advantage of talking to people who might be making those decisions, share a little bit of our experience as well. But the lightning question is yes or no. Do you support tapping federal funding to transition from diesel buses, school buses, to electric school buses? And you already started the question, but I think it's Mr. Bennett's turn to begin. So yes or no?
No.
No.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
In order to say yes to that question, I would have to have more information. So I think at this point, I would stick with the status quo and say no.
Okay.
In my case, the same thing. I will need additional information to respond.
Okay. Well, I'll share another little bit of information. There's a lot of federal money to help school districts do exactly that. So think about it when you get elected. What can be done to lower the Osceola Public Schools carbon footprint and to encourage students to do the same at home with their families? Climate change is a real challenge for all of the planet. And I think it requires everybody working together. So how can the schools, right, contribute in raising the awareness, right, creating citizens and children and families that care about it and moving them to action in their own homes? Mr. Melendez.
Like I mentioned before, solar panels are huge. Whenever we build new schools and you actually have a budget to put it together, let's start that in the very beginning, because it's hard to retrofit older schools because you just don't have to have the panel. You have to have the wiring and the connectivity to a current grid that may not be outdated. And so the amount of money to retrofit it may be too much. So, but we can have a new plan to say, okay, moving forward, every time we build a new school, let's go ahead and do that. Because even though the cost may be more upfront, the maintenance and utility bills go down significantly, because it's not just especially the operations. You should look at our utility bill. We're constantly asking OUC for a discount all the time. Come on, help us out. We're a school district. We're a nonprofit organization. We're not a private for-profit entity. And they do work with us, immensely. And the other thing too is we look at getting gardens. Sometimes we forget about that too. We're having a new atrium system. If you look at some of the prototypes of some of the high schools that we build, there's always areas where it's centralized, where you come into the school, let the students grow their own stuff. Let them grow their own food, and I think we're doing that at Sunbridge as well. And I think at Harmony, they have the veterinary program where they're teaching them to work with the animals and to graze them. But they get their own booster club. So, Harmony parents are very active, so they can get things that, above and beyond what we can traditionally allocate to them. But I really think that, again, solar panel is the easy one, because right now we are currently building 3 or 4 new schools as we speak, and we're building wings. At St. Cloud High School, they just finished the wing. We're building a new school out at Reedy Creek. We're remodeling it. We're remodeling OXA, and we're spending literally $180 million to remodel OXA. Out of that $180 million, maybe we can value engineer. And what I mean by that is, if we don't want to spend $185, let's spend $175 by reducing the other expenses that may not be needed and allocate a certain amount to the solar panels in order to reduce the operating costs of maintaining that school.
Thank you, Mr. Melendez. Mr. Renzo, same question.
Yeah, so I think on a macro scale, we have to, especially with new construction and remodeling or adding new wings, we have to make sure that we are putting those things in place that are cost saving and environmentally friendly. I think too often we think that in order to be environmentally friendly, we have to spend a bunch of money, or we're going to do something that's fiscally irresponsible or something like that. And I don't think that that's the case. I think something as simple as having our faucets in our bathrooms be like motion censored to where like they only run for a certain amount of time. That way they're not using as much water, right? Or we have blow dryers with their hands. That way we're not always just like throwing a bunch of paper towels in the trash can and things like that. So so those are kind of the things that we can do logistically, I think, with construction and just how a school functions. But kind of back to what I was saying before is showing the students that while we're doing these things, we're setting an example that it is your responsibility and it's our responsibility to make sure that we are taking initiative to try to address some of these things. And again, it comes down to, I know that, climate change is somewhat of a politically charged issue on a national scale, but it doesn't have to be when we're talking about ways to be more efficient and actually save money, and also maybe even creating jobs in our community to be able to implement some of these things. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Ms. Garcia.
I agree with what they're mentioning about the environmental friendly for the student and the infrastructure. Well, how can they take what they're learning and seeing and taking it home? I will definitely create a marketing campaign among the students using students themselves doing videos, creating this awareness. Like if they're, like you mentioned, the faucet and the paper towel and all that, using themselves, being the example, doing these videos, these short videos, so they can create the awareness among the students' body, among the student body. And after that, I know that whenever they see it from their peers, they're going to follow. That's how they are. They hear it, they see it, and they will model and they will mimic whatever they see. And then that's how we can get it home. And they will go home and say, hey, I learned this. I've been learning about this at school. And they can take it home and help their parents to save the environment. Entiendo que además de todo la infraestructura y de salvar el ambiente y cosas que son preparadas para ahorrar energía y todo lo demás, podemos utilizar los mismos estudiantes para hacer una campaña de mercadeo, y en esta campaña de mercadeo ellos mismos dando ejemplos de cosas que pueden hacer para salvar el planeta y para crear conciencia en sus casas. Y esos estudiantes, cuando lo vean, ellos lo están experimentando. ¿Y qué van a hacer? Lo van a llevar a sus casas y va a ser como una reacción en cadena. Lo enseñamos en la escuela y los niños después lo llevan a sus casas.
So I'm going to come at this from a little bit different perspective. Business has figured this out. I was involved in a 1.2 million square foot warehouse, and we started looking at how do we reduce operational costs, and out of that came some very simple fixes like timers on lights with motion sensors, and other things that could help reduce some of the cost on the electrical. I think we should be taking a look at what's going on in business. We should take a look at opportunities to engage experts in the field and utilize some of those suggestions, and not assume that the school is so much different than running a business. It's different in that children are the educational output that comes from the school, but in terms of being able to make smart business decisions that then translate into better environmental and economic situations, business has figured this out, and we just need to utilize some of those learnings.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. And so that concludes the section on climate change and resilience and sustainability. We're going to move now to civic engagement, but before we do that, do we have any questions out there in the audience that we can bring to the students? I mean, to the students.
Well, they were students. They were
To
students.
the former students, the
Yeah.
now candidates.
So we have a question here online from Father Hoover Gajica, and it's about discrimination, right? He want to know what would you do, because a lot of Hispanic students are victims of discrimination in our schools. What would you do to avoid discrimination, not only to Hispanics, but to any student in schools.
And our next one would be Mr. Renzel.
So first off, one of the hallmarks of public education is that we take everyone, and we are tasked with making sure that every student is getting a quality education, regardless of their ethnic background, their socioeconomic status, their race, their religion, whatever. And I think sometimes we see data that's troubling in our discipline, that we have a disproportionate amount of Hispanic students or African-American students that are being given referrals and things of that nature. We need to be actively looking into those things to see what the causes of that is, and look at our policies of discipline of whether they are skewed to the point that it's negatively impacting a certain group of students without cause. And now, having said that, I think that we also have a responsibility to make sure that we're not immediately assuming that if someone's getting in trouble, that it's not their fault as an individual. And I'm saying that across the board, that we need to make sure that we have individual accountability for our students, but that is applied equally regardless of where that student comes from or what they look like, or what economic status they are, or anything like that.
Thank you, Mr. Renzel. Ms. Garcia, same question.
Discrimination has no place in a classroom. When I used to teach fully in Poinciana High School, we treat our students the same way. The other thing is our schools, if there's an issue in a school of discrimination, we can retrain the teachers or offer other classes that they can learn a little bit more about each culture. And for the students per se, sometimes within them, they kind of tend to do that. So give that education, educate our students about our differences. Lo digo de esta manera, discriminación, no hay lugar en el salón de clases para discriminación. Creo que cada uno nos tenemos que crear conciencia. Si hay algún problema en alguna de las escuelas, podemos entrenar a nuestro staff si fuera necesario, pero yo creo que también entre los estudiantes ocurre, y es nuestra labor como maestros y como educadores enseñarles, y como distrito educar a los estudiantes sobre lo que son las diferencias, donde nos podamos aceptar como somos y amarnos, porque eso fue lo que nos mandó Dios a hacer, amarnos.
Muchas gracias. Mr. Bennett.
So I didn't catch the name of the gentleman that asked the question. Father Hoover Garcia? Gajica. Speaking to you directly, I'm sorry if your family was affected by discrimination, or anyone that you love. Again, my son's mentally handicapped. Discrimination is something that we deal with on a regular basis. And from my perspective, it should have a zero tolerance policy in the schools, as well as most every place in life. But we have to investigate when there are claims of discrimination. And if we find that it is taking place, we need to address it quickly, swiftly, and harshly, because we can't allow that behavior to continue. What we find with my son is that oftentimes it's individuals who are bigoted, or there are people who have gotten some improper thoughts about what his disability means, and I think some of those same behaviors are affecting your community as well. So I really feel badly for anybody who's experiencing that, particularly in our schools, but there should be a zero tolerance for that anywhere in the schools.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Melendez?
And to Mr. Bennett's point, not only discrimination should have zero tolerance, but also bullying, because they go along hand in hand. And we have a policy at the district now: if you see something, say something. I think that's very important because a lot of times when we hear cases, well, the parent was like, well, they were bullying my son for like, 3 months. Well, did you ever tell the principal? Did you ever report it to anyone? No. I'm like, we were not able to address something. And then what's even worse, the state of Florida defines bullying as a repeated pattern of behavior. So if the very first time that I put hands on Mr. Renzo, it's not considered bullying, it's considered an incident. So if we never document the incident from the very beginning, then you never establish a pattern of behavior for which a behavioral contract can be constructed. Because we have the ability as school board members to hear these cases and say, okay, you're going to have a no contact contract. You and Dylan are going to try to put in worst case scenario, we'll separate them in different classrooms or even move them to schools outright. Because at one point we had, and I can't tell you everything for school confidentiality, but there was a gang related incident where the two students couldn't even go to the same school. We had to separate them and move them from one school to the other. So, but I think another component of that is back in 2008, I had the honor of winning the school board for the very first time. And I was the first Latino elegido en la historia de la Florida, in Central Florida. In Central Florida, we never had a Hispanic on the school board when I was elected. And we only had one principal that was of the entire school district. That was Janice Franceschi. And that was only one. And I was like, wait a second. So I went to Dr. Grego at the time. I mean, you mean tell me that there's no candidates of Hispanic descent that are capable of running a school? And I'm telling them at the time a PhD, because a master's degree in ed leadership is the minimum. So I don't want to look like I didn't want any token appointments. You mean to tell me there's no PhDs? Next thing you know, Dr. Brizendine came out of nowhere. And before I left my first term, we had over 6 principals in the different schools at different levels, from elementary school to middle school and high school. And eventually we put Melba Luciano as the first Puerto Rican woman as the leader of the superintendent of the schools. So I think that's one way to eliminate or reduce that discrimination, is by having people at different levels of the government, not just the secretaries.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to, sure.
I'm going to do a quick follow-up to that question as a former news director. I think you all pretty much agree that there's no tolerance for discrimination. That from the teacher to the students. Now, and nowadays, I think that our youth are coming more understanding of their sexuality at a very early age. You got kids in junior school, in high schools, that already identify as LGBTQ, non-binary, he, she, or he. What happens when the message from the government comes discriminatory to those groups in the schools? What is your take on it, and what would you do to avoid kids, LGBTQ youth, to feel out of place in a school?
We're going to start with Becerra Garcia, please.
I was called, my calling is to love my neighbor. And that's a strong calling. And when I talk about like what I've seen in the schools, we have to integrate our students and we have to love them. And when I worked for the Pulse incident, that I was dealing with the families of the angels that we lost, the 49 angels. I saw everything. I saw how people were coming against the families and all that. And there was something that we learned during that time, that there is a calling and we have to follow that. That is love our neighbor. Lo voy a decir en español. Durante el tiempo de cuando me dices de la comunidad, digo que el amor es lo que prevalece. Entiendo que somos llamados a amar a todos. No podemos discriminar porque Dios nos llamó a amar a nuestro vecino y a todos. Que durante el tiempo que tuve que trabajar como la ayudante del condado, representando a todas las familias que fallecieron el tiempo de Pulse, pude descubrir que mucha gente le tiraba a las familias, pero descubrimos que el amor prevaleció. Y el amor prevaleció y rompió barreras durante ese tiempo. Y yo entiendo que eso nos enseñó una lección, que tenemos que seguir con ese amor para todos, de igual manera.
Mr. Bennett?
So this is a tough issue on a lot of different aspects. my take on governmental involvement in lifestyle choices or sexuality is that the government owns no standing in that decision. That's between individuals. In the case of minors, it's in between individuals and their parents. In terms of school and administration on how they should handle that, I agree with you. It should be handled with love. If this is some issue that truly affects the student and the parents are on board with everything that they're saying, and there's strong family support for it, I think we just need to treat them with love.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Melendez?
Yeah, I believe discrimination in any form is unacceptable. So that lands at that ability to say, hey, if somebody feels discriminated, the same process exists for somebody gets bullied or somebody gets into a fight or somebody has drugs on campus. We evaluate them the same. Now, the reality is the state of Florida has its own regulations, Title IX, and the federal government has their own regulations. So as a school board, we may sit there and say, okay, idealistically, this is what I want to do. But if it's in violation of federal law, if it's in violation of state law, then it becomes an issue, So at the end of the day, we should just treat people, with just due respect, because at the end of the day, our goal as an academic institution is to educate our children, all children, regardless if they're black, white, Hispanic, gay, straight, it doesn't matter. If somebody's gay, they have the same opportunities as somebody who's not to receive the best education possible. So I think that when sometimes it gets a little too politicized, to be completely forthright, and it gets politicized by both sides. And I think that's unnecessary. That's why I believe that school board races should be nonpartisan, because the main focus should be on the elevation of all students to that next level. And that includes everybody. So I have no fear of saying, hey, everybody can do whatever they need to, as long as they respect the common order. Like, for instance, we have uniforms. Everyone needs to wear a uniform. If somebody doesn't wear a uniform to school, we ask them to go home. So that's the opposite of discrimination, is treating everyone with that same common courtesy and respect, regardless of where they come from or regardless of how they express their sexuality.
Thank you.
So, excuse me. First and foremost, we need to be treating everyone with dignity and respect. And we need to take, as I said before, a humanistic approach to try to get to know each individual. And we are all complicated people, and we're not defined by just one or two things. I'll just say it, the state of Florida has passed several laws recently that have been aimed at the LGBTQ community, and this has become a very politically charged issue. And I think first and foremost, what we need to do as leaders is we need to turn the temperature down a little bit, and we need to take the rhetoric down, and we need to listen to each other and stop talking past each other on this particular issue. And the other thing is that students need to feel safe in school. If they don't feel safe, they're not going to learn. And students might not feel safe because of feeling like they're being discriminated against because they are gay or trans. And again, it comes back to the dignity and respect. As a teacher, I try to make sure that all of my students feel safe in my class, and we need to make sure that we're doing that across the board. And I want to say one more thing, that when we talk about book banning and things come into this conversation, and I have a hard time when I know that there are people in our community, families in our community that are same-sex couples, and we are simultaneously, in some instances, some people are pushing an idea that these people's family is so obscene that we need to take books off the shelves that depict them. And I think, I don't know that there's anybody locally really speaking out against this, and I don't know what this does to me politically for saying this, but I don't really care. It's wrong, and we are actually losing teachers because of this. So we're going to talk about a staff shortage. This is part of it. So turn the rhetoric down, be kind, and stop talking past each other.
Thank you. So now we are going to move on to our next section, and our next session has to do with civic engagement. And the first question is that studies have shown that parent involvement is a strong indicator for student success. When elected, how would you encourage parent involvement for all families? And is there an opportunity for nonprofits to help with this function? And we are starting this time with Mr. Bennett.
So this is a discussion topic that's personal to me. Having parental involvement is critical for our students, both to allow the parents to understand what's being taught to their children, as well as being able to learn with them. What we've seen recently is the adoption of a lot of technology solutions. And what that does is it takes the books away from the parents' ability to look at them. And I believe that that's counterproductive to transparency with the teachers or with the students. And it prevents the parents from understanding what the curriculum is, what's being taught to their children, and makes it difficult to have some of those dinner time conversations with our students that are really valuable. You know, I sit down with my sons every day and I say, what did you learn in school today? And then we talk about it a little bit, but it's very difficult when you can't look at the text readily without them going and grabbing their laptop and opening it up. It's very difficult to sit down and understand what's being taught to them. So I don't have any problem with nonprofits being involved in that at all. But parents need to be better involved in their students.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Melendez?
Yeah, multiple studies have shown that parental involvement does improve student performance. And the other thing that I started joking with before, you know, you have a SAC meeting, these parent meetings that to get together at the end of school, you might get 4 or 5 people there. But if you have a talent show at the end of the night, man, that place is packed. You know, my son goes to Parton. Well, at the time he goes to Neptune now. By the time he went to Parton Settlement, they used to have these talent shows and they were full to the brim. Every parent came out of nowhere. So I was joking with the superintendent. I said, wait a second. Next time you do a talent show, let the first half be the SAC meeting. Now that you got 50 parents there, let the kids get ready, dressed in the back, do the rehearsals. And while you have an active, engaged audience, that's where you got to learn your community. That's where you got to know that la cultura puertorriqueña, especialmente, we dance, we have fun, you get music, you get food out there, you're going to get higher participation. So why go against the current? You know, in Spanish, it goes, ¿por qué va contra la corriente? You know, this, you got to know your audience, and then you integrate that. You have a sporting event. You know, if you have a big football game, great, there's halftime show. Well, during halftime show, hey guys, you know, hey, we have a SAC meeting. Hey, here's what's going on. Distribute the flyers. You know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So it's learning the way that there's a natural alignment of where parents already are at, or where do we currently exist, and getting them to say, hey, by the way, now that I got your attention, this is what we need you to do. Hey, we need volunteers for this or volunteers for that. And that's the way we could partner with our nonprofits by creating more events that get parental engagement into the schools.
Thank you. Mr. Renzo?
Yeah, so I think, you know, I'm a big believer that it takes a village to raise a child. And I think it's very, very important for teachers and parents and the school district to be on the same page and to be allies in making sure that a child and a student is getting everything that they need. A big part of that is making sure that the parents have access to what their children are learning. And as a teacher, I specifically, everything that I do in class goes online, and parents can go on and look at that. We have no issue with showing parents what is happening in our classrooms. We're proud of it. And the big thing is that we need to make sure that we talk a lot about, you know, teacher accountability and school accountability. The other thing is that we need to make sure that we're engaging with parents to make them feel that they're part of the school itself and have a community. And I know that it's somewhat difficult in Osceola County because we're very transient. We have the choice program. Students move around from school to school. So sometimes people don't get to really have deep roots. But one of the things that we're trying to do at St. Cloud High School is we have a advisory period, which is kind of like a homeroom. And it allows me as a teacher to have just about 22 kids that I am a mentor for, and I can be reaching out to those parents and building those relationships to make sure that they are involved in their students' success as well, because it's going to take, you know, as a high school teacher, I only see the students for 42 minutes out of the day. I'm not a miracle worker, right? The parents are with them a lot more. And if we're on the same page, and if they know what I think and I know what they think, then we're going to have a much better success rate with our students.
Parental involvement, it's as you mentioned, we need that for the student success. If I become a board and the people, they give me the opportunity, first thing I'll do, I would love to have contact hours with the parents. I would like to offer office hours. Like if I say a Wednesday, that's early day, having from 2 to 7 p.m., an opportunity for them to come to me. Sometimes they don't have the time. If I have to have office hours until 9 p.m., then let's beat it and we'll do it. But I think that's important to facilitate in a way that the parents can communicate. If they are missing, we have technology. That's a great ally. We have also the students themselves. Like as he say, we can entertain them in a way. But for me, definitely office hours, and not just that. I think that we can have workshops, like monthly workshops, like in my District 2, my community, we are Latinos, nos gusta la fiesta, nos gusta disfrutar, pero traer horarios de oficina, traer actividades y seminarios que sean de temas de interés para la familia. Como decir, tenemos una gran población, yo he caminado más de 1,500 casas y tenemos una población de muchos estudiantes autistas. Traer temas que sean de interés para ellos, también hacer cosas que sean de interés para padres y como dar las clases de español en el área que ellos sepan que están ofreciéndose.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias.
Sorry.
The next question we're going to do is a quick answer. So we're going to try to keep it within 30 seconds. Just a quick answer. One thing that Osceola County Public Schools can do to encourage cooperation and civic engagement in children from kinder to 12. Okay, it's one idea, so that they can develop interest and passion for serving their community and even considering service in government. And we'll start with Mr. Melendez this time.
I always thought it was wonderful as an elected official that we have access to others. So I think they should be in the classroom as guest speakers. For instance, we have civics, that's a mandatory class in middle school. The congressman should be there, or ask a judge. You know, they always run for re-election. They're always campaigning. I thought it'd be phenomenal to have these elected officials come into the classroom as guest speakers from different levels of government, not just all the locals, but the city councils, the county commissions, the judges, and different levels, the congressman, you know, the senator. It's kind of hard to get a U.S. senator down here, but, you know, just locally that get them participating.
So as a social studies teacher, this is incredibly important for me. This is what I'm trying to do all the time, is make sure that students understand that being civically engaged is part of their responsibility and that democracy doesn't work without them. And I think that's a great idea what Mr. Melendez says, to make sure that our elected officials are visible to our students. And also, quite honestly, I think it would go a long way that if politicians conducted themselves in a way that made people look up to them, and not in a way that might go in the opposite direction.
Thank you, Mr. Renzo. Ms. Garcia.
For me, I have the best example. It happened today. There was a 2-year-old baby. He came and we were campaigning. We have the signs, and he was so engaged with us. He was dancing, give them that experience. That kid just wanted to stay with us. He left the park, the playground, just to be with us. So that's the type of experience that we should give them. Hoy es el mejor ejemplo que tuve, un niño de 2 años que vino a nosotros mientras estábamos haciendo nuestra campaña. Él quería una pancarta y quería moverla y todo, y así esa es la oportunidad que podemos darle a nuestros niños, ser el mejor ejemplo de que ellos vean que lo hacemos en paz y unidad.
Gracias.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is, what is one idea that you would bring to the school board that would encourage cooperation and civic engagement in children from kindergarten all the way to, you know, high school? And so so as they develop an interest and a passion for serving their community foremost, but also consider government as a career.
Okay. So again, I'm gonna address this in a way that's personal to me. You know, the Harmony High School has put in a buddy program where they allow students who are neurotypical to get paired up on a regular basis with a student that's handicapped. it's a great program. It's very engaging and it's meaningful. And the students that go through that and participate in the buddy program are people who have a lifelong love for the handicapped. It's really hard to engage with these folks without falling in love with them, just because they're so special, they're so engaging, and I think we need to give more opportunities for children to provide service to either the elderly or the disadvantaged or the handicapped, whether that's creating sanitation kits for the homeless, or again, going to nursing homes and singing at Christmas time. I think there are plenty of opportunities that we have to allow those students to understand the joy that comes from serving others, and that's really what we're looking for.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. We're also going to, we have one last question in this section around civic engagement. As a school board member, how would you respond to the efforts of special interest groups who advocate for censoring an existing exclusive curriculum? I think we talked a little bit about that. Curriculum in this country for decades have been designed by experts in education who study, right, education and know what is the trends and the best ways to get students in learning. But sometimes there's conflicts with the parents, or one parent, or two, or a couple parents. You can't please every parent. There has to be some some basic guidelines, right, for how the schools develop their curriculums. But it seems like a couple parents may be having a louder voice and having an impact because of politics in restrictions in curriculum. So how would you address this conflict that's happening, particularly in the state of Florida, which including has driven a lot of teachers out of the state to look for jobs elsewhere? And I believe this round is going to be started by Mr. Renzel.
So this kind of goes back to the piece about transparency for parents. I think these things walk hand in hand, because parents first need to be empowered to feel like they know what's being taught. So maybe there's an optional course that they're not comfortable with their child taking, and they can opt them out. And so what I would say is that parents, excuse me, parents have the ability to decide what their children are to learn, but they don't have a right to take away opportunities from other children. So I'll give you an example. We used to teach AP psychology in Osceola County, and the legislation that came out of Tallahassee and then the Florida DOE basically said that it violated state statute because one topic in a 72 topic course talked about gender identity and sexual orientation. And this is a psychology class for mostly 11th graders. A lot of our students take that class because they're going to go into like early childhood education or something like that. And the DOE said that it violated state statute. And then the very next day they rebutted that and basically said, no, it's actually okay. But our district, I think, being fearful about what the blowback was going to be, just took away AP psychology anyway. So we robbed a whole group of students with an opportunity because of fear, and because we're not being intellectually honest about what is actually being taught. And transparency, making sure that we're honest about that, is a big part of that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Ms. Garcia, you're next.
We have the professionals and experts that they make that decision. And can you repeat the question again? I just want to make sure that.
It kind of, I'll pose it a different
Okay.
way. Do one or two or a couple, a small group of parents have the right to basically block something that they don't like in school because they, they're parents, they're not educators, they're not curriculum experts. But we've seen how it's become like activists go in and they challenge things that may happen or may not happen, or sometimes they're just ideas of something that could happen. And then it creates a political backlash that then supersedes what, trained, doctoral degreed, education experts have recommended for a school district.
As I say, we have professionals and experts that they are reviewing and researching all this information, so they think that's appropriate and adequate for our students. I know that there will be groups that will come to us as board members that we have to listen. We have to give them the opportunity to express themselves. But we will have to go back and review our policies and make sure that our policies go back and we are not violently, taking away from the students. Entiendo que tenemos profesionales y expertos que están tomando las decisiones de estas materias y de estos currículos para nuestros estudiantes, y van a haber grupos que van a venir a nosotros donde vamos a tener que tomar decisiones, pero tenemos que volver nuevamente a nuestras políticas que están establecidas en las escuelas para tomar las decisiones correctas, pero tenemos que escucharlos también. Pero entiendo que no debemos ir con nuestros expertos y evaluar todo lo que se presenta y como un grupo, como un board, pues tomar las decisiones que tengamos que tomar.
Muchas gracias.
So I'd like to challenge the idea that the experts are always right on the curriculum. Again, coming from my own experience, they expected my son, who is nonverbal, can't hold a pencil, to do graphing on his first day of his freshman year of high school. They gave him a C in algebra, and I don't know how you would even scaffold the curriculum that they've got for the handicapped students down to a level that would be suitable for him. But clearly that curriculum was not appropriate. In terms of, single parents or special interests, imposing their will on other teacher or on other students, I think we have to apply some level of morality to some of the materials. We had a Supreme Court judge who said, in regards to pornography, I know it when I see it. If there's something that truly is objectionable, it should be very apparent to folks. Bring it to the attention of a select committee inside the school. Allow the media teams to view the material and find out whether they find it objectionable as well. It shouldn't be a hard decision, but it shouldn't be something that's driven by special interests either. I'm a candidate that has not taken any money from anyone else. I've completely funded my own campaign because I don't want to have ties or special interests who drive my decisions going forward. I don't want to owe anyone anything. And special interests play no part in education.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Melendez.
Yeah, I echo Mr. Bennett's, sentiment as well. I don't like the over influence of special interests. That's why I'm largely self-funding my campaign as well. And that's really important because you got folks like the governor saying that slavery, it taught them some good working traits, and then the politicians try to insert themselves into the curriculum too much to a certain degree. Because I understand there's a certain protectionism. Like, for instance, my son, he had a writing prompt that was very offensive. So even when I brought it up, but to Mr. Renzel's point, we didn't get rid of the entire class. It was just this particular writing prompt that wasn't really proper. And so we have to be able to depoliticize it and just take it for what it is at face value. So we got to learn our American history. The reality is slavery did exist. There was, a civil rights movement. We cannot deny reality or try to rewrite history. And I think that's where the problem becomes. So if there's something that's a specific offensive material, you address that one particular item in isolation. You don't take out the entire AP psychology class. Maybe there was one chapter that wasn't good. Then you just tell people, okay, let's try to get rid of that one chapter. Or just ask maybe even the publishers that, hey, on your next rewrite on version 3, can the state of Florida create a version for us? Because these big publishers work with us. They can collaborate with us and make material that meet our benchmarks and our state standards.
Thank you, Mr. Melendez. You had a chance already, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, Angel, is there anyone out online that has questions at this point? Not at this moment. Okay, so we'll move on to the next subject, which is more in line with the specialty of this discussion tonight, and that's education, technology, arts, and culture, all things that exist within, schooling and within the education framework. So many school districts right now are facing funding challenges because of the increase of competition from alternative education approaches, right? Charter schools, you name it, homeschooling. How would you advocate for better funding for the traditional public schools? And this time we'll start, I believe is with Ms. Garcia.
How will I advocate? You mentioned?
Yeah, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, just
Yeah.
and
Okay, so school districts are facing funding challenges because of the increase of competition from alternative educational approaches, charter schools, homeschooling, and other. So how would you advocate for better funding for the traditional public school?
we have the resources in the classrooms. Those are the students. And I think the best way to do it, using successful stories of students that have accomplished this 12 years with using the different programs that we have and use them as the voice and the spokesperson for the county. I'm always thinking about marketing in the way because I kind of like in the communication area, but I think we have the best example in our schools right now, using our students, advertising what we have and the resources that we have, and taking it out there to our legislature meeting, having these meetings with them so we can keep those funds here. Yo creo que la mejor oportunidad que tenemos es utilizar nuestros mismos estudiantes, que ellos tienen el mejor ejemplo, historias de éxito que hayamos tenido, que ellos puedan hablar por nuestro distrito y adicional, utilizar esos mismos ejemplos, llevarlos a nuestros legisladores y representantes para que ellos vean el fruto de lo que estamos haciendo aquí en el condado de Osceola.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Mr. Bennett, same question.
So our country was founded on capitalism, and people vote with where they send their kids to school. If we've got parents who feel that the public education is not serving them because of whatever reason, they're entitled to make sure that their student gets the best education possible, and that could be in a specialty arts academy. It could be at a charter school. It could be at an ABA school if they've got a student that's handicapped. But if the school wants to compete with the public schools want to compete with that, they need to do a better job educating our kids. It's parents' right and prerogative to pull their kids out of school if they feel that their needs are not being served, or they feel that it's not adequately teaching their children. So they need to do a better job, and the market will respond.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Melendez, same question.
Correct. In a competitive environment, it's kind of like what Mr. Bennett said. We want excellence in education, period. When you walk in that door of a school, I want that secretary to say, hey, welcome to elementary school. How can I help you, sir or ma'am? Regardless of who you are. Because a lot of times when parents go to a school, a lot of times it's not for a good reason. A lot of times it's to complain about something. So we have to control that environment from the very beginning and have a welcoming environment. Hey, welcome, Dylan. Hi, welcome to the school. You need to repeat that over and over again. The same thing as when you pick up the phone. So at the end of the day, I'm not afraid to compete. Matter of fact, we're redoing our strategic plan now, and we spoke about that. Parents have that option of going to the charter schools. Well, how do you beat the charter school? By beating them, by having more career and technical education programs, by focusing on increasing sports for students that want to have that opportunity, because a lot of times the charter schools don't have sports programs. So let's highlight the reasons why and give people a reason why to come to us. Because at the end of the day, the state of Florida gives us money per student that attends your school, which is called FTE. So the more students that attend your school, the more money you make. So if we provide a better educational product where parents feel confident that they're coming to our schools, our funding is going to increase as a result.
Thank you, Mr. Melendez.
So I agree with the competition piece. The reality is, though, when you look at the way that the state legislature has set up how the schools are funded, we have more and more of our dollars that are supposed to be allocated to our public schools that are going into for-profit charter schools. So I want to be clear on this, that I am all for the choice program, public school to public school, public school to public charter school, but public dollars that are allocated for education should not go to someone to make a profit. Not to call Mr. Bennett, I know we're not supposed to, but we are a capitalist country, but the idea that public education just fits nicely into capitalism is simply not the case. It's a public good that fuels capitalism and making sure that people are educated to the point that they can be successful in their lives. And I am a supporter of more vocational training and making sure that we're preparing our students for a variety of jobs in the future. But the other reality is that most of the charter schools actually aren't outperforming the public schools. There's a perception that they are, but when you look at the data, that's just simply not true. So, and also some of the charter schools are not held to the same standards as the public schools are. And if a student gets kicked out of a charter school, where do they go? They come right back to the public school system because we are here to educate everyone. And those dollars don't necessarily come back to us. So we have to fix that problem. But while we should be empowering parents to be able to make the choice for their kids, we shouldn't be kind of tying public education's arm behind its back and then calling it a failure.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. I'm sorry, Mr. Renzel. For those who don't know, back in the 90s, I was a teacher myself. And I taught high school in Chicago, in a pretty tough neighborhood. But back in those days, there was a lot of concern about being a gap between boys and girls in education. And at that point, especially in STEM and in math and science, girls were behind. Today, the gap has sort of moved in the other direction, interestingly enough. So that sort of says something about how powerful the public school systems are to really help the girls catch up. But it's gotten now, when you look at the statistics, that the girls are now outperforming the boys. The inequities in academic achievement between boys and girls has been widening since the 90s. How would you address this situation and ensure that all students have access to an equitable and education system? An equitable education. And we'll start with you, Mr. Bennett.
So again, I think the perception by students is set from a foundational element in their home. If the family provides direction that education is important, then it's going to be important to the students. Without that, it kind of falls apart. The education should be that is provided by public education should be the same, whether you're a boy or a girl. That being said, we know that they learn in different ways. We all learn in different ways. But I think you've got to help reinforce with parents that educational decisions, educational attitudes, a desire for their student to succeed and to excel in school, that is a decision that's going to be largely impacted by the parent, and is going to contribute to their child's success. We should expect success out of our children. Understand their failure points, understand their weaknesses, but expect and drive for success for those students.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Melendez?
Thank you. I believe those statistics in Osceola County don't exist as much because when we go to graduation ceremonies, we look at that. Who's the salutatorian versus the valedictorian, and we're seeing it's a good mix. There's some schools where they have 3 women in a row, sometimes with 3 guys, or they're a mix. And at the end of the day, I believe our teachers are teaching everyone equally. We're not discriminating and saying, okay, we're not putting, women in more advanced placement classes and men in different classes. I don't think that's happening. We're actually looking at the benchmark scores that students are achieving throughout, and we're actually placing them appropriately and having them reach that higher standard. So I think that's a narrative that may exist nationwide or throughout other states, but specifically in Osceola County, we believe everyone has an equal opportunity to grow. And I can honestly say that we have a lot of women that are teachers as well to provide role models. And the issue is trying to get more males into the classroom because we believe that a good father that is involved in a child's education is where it's at as well. Because the reality is, if somebody's working 2 or 3 jobs, it's kind of hard to be a role model for them. Especially in Osceola County, we have a little bit of a schism between those that are very successful and those that are just working to get by. And so we need to have that ability to say, let's equalize everything. And we do that by providing a quality education to everyone. So I can honestly say that in Osceola County, we do not have a huge divide in educational opportunities. Celebration High School has an IB program, but so does Gateway High School has an IB program. So we're very good at making sure that one school does not have a whole bunch of resources and the other one does not. So we do a pretty good job here locally to disperse those resources and programs throughout the entire district.
Thank you. Ms. Renzo?
So I think when you look at those statistics, and it is true that, I mean, you might not see it with the valedictorian or the salutatorian, but when you look at the bottom 25% of our students, and you look at students that are most likely to be disciplined in school and given referrals, they are overwhelmingly male. And I think the root of this, quite honestly, is that we need to make sure that students feel like they have a purpose for being there that extends beyond just taking the test. We have a lot of students that aren't necessarily all about school, right? We need to motivate them to feel like they want to be there. So whether that's investment in extracurriculars, whether that's investment in more technical training, at St. Cloud High School, we have an automotive program. We have guys and girls in there, but a lot of our boy students are in there. And I have students that are in my U.S. history class. They're just like, I just want to be in the garage. Like that's what they like. They like the hands-on. So giving them more opportunities to find what they are proficient at, I think will be a tide that raises all boats and specifically would help our male population get better.
I think we can give them the opportunity. I don't see the difference. Whenever I've been visiting the schools and I'm teaching fire prevention or anything like that and talk to the teachers, I haven't heard that. But I will say that if there is this not equal, we can incentivize the students, motivate them, looking for other programs to motivate them and see, I know they like sport, what type of sport. Like for us, like in the fire department, we're trying to engage with the high school population and make them see that, hey, this is an opportunity, but try to do the same thing we're doing, visiting, giving them the experience hands-on in different things so they can have the same, que tengan la misma oportunidad, que puedan ver esto, motivar a los estudiantes, pero no veo ninguna diferencia entre si es mujer o hombre, lo veo igual.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Garcia. We're going to now move to one last question in the education category, and that is preparing our students for jobs here in Osceola and Orange County. So we have NASA, we have Disney, we have some major industries here. We have solar panels factories coming up. We have computer chips manufacturing coming up. These are all jobs that hopefully the students of the Osceola County Public Schools are going to have access to. So the question is, how are we preparing our students in Osceola Public Schools to be ready for the best jobs in Osceola County? Chip manufacturing in Neo City, solar panels in Poinciana, and even the school district, right? Mr. Melendez mentioned this huge need for teachers, right? So how do we prepare our children, our youth, for the jobs that are here in Osceola, so that they can stay and contribute to the economy and grow the economy of Osceola County? And I think the question now goes to Mr. Bennett. Started the last round.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's
Okay.
Mr. Melendez.
Just last week, I just came back from the Kennedy Space Center. We just signed a memorandum of understanding to create a space academy for Osceola County. And one thing that they mentioned was when people think of the Space Academy, they always think about astronauts. Like, no, the companies like Blue Origin and other industries that are around there are looking for logistics. They're looking for payload specialists. They're looking for manufacturing. They're also looking for traditional office jobs like bookkeepers and estimators. So this is an industry that is being tapped. At the school district, we also have dual enrollment with multiple colleges. A lot of times people think that it's just dual enrollment with Valencia. We signed an agreement with Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University at Osceola High School to develop the aerospace program because they have an airport right there, right behind the school. We also have dual enrollment with University of Florida, and that works with Neo City. And so we have a lot of opportunities at different things, because the reality is no student or no two students are going to have the same exact interests or go for the same exact things. So we have to try to capture them and really prepare them. And that's why I think that, and what's happening too is a lot of times people think the career and technical are only for those not going to college. No, when you look at the statistics, a lot of students are getting industry certifications and still going to college. So they'll end up going to FTC and they go, you know what? I got my degree. I want to become a manager or administrator. Let me go back to UCF and finish my actual bachelor's degree. So it just the students pop at different times. So they may not be ready for college now, but maybe it just took like an FTC or Valencia College or an OTEC to get them started and motivated to go to the next level.
Thank you, Mr. Melendez. Mr. Rizal.
So I agree with everything that Mr. Melendez just said, and I think, so I'm not going to reiterate everything that he said, but I'll take a little bit of a different approach. I think we need to be focusing in on the skills that are translatable to any job. As an employer, what do you want? You want someone who's on time. You want someone who can work with other people. You want someone who's responsible. You want someone who takes initiative. You want somebody who wants to grow. And we need to make sure that we're instilling that in our education system to make sure that students know that those intangible skills are translatable to any industry. And the other thing that we need to make sure that we're doing is making sure that students know that it's not just college or bust. Okay. In fact, we kind of stopped really saying like who's going to college. We say post-secondary. So post-secondary is all encompassing. It's technical training. It's going to technical school. It's college. It's going to the military, whatever. It's like, you don't have to have a plan just to go to four-year university, but you do need to have a plan. And you need to also have the skills to be able to be successful once you get there. And those are the things that I was just talking about, just the basic things of, can you be a good teammate? Do you have are you responsible? Are you on time? All of those things. And I think that's how we make sure that they're ready for any job, especially here in Osceola County.
Thank you. Ms. Garcia.
Character development. I'll say that our students, they just mentioned all the programs that we have. That's post-secondary, but we can still have space for more. We can expand and have more services, but we can use like right now here where we are right now at the college, and they have all of their programs. But for our student, it's just character development. Just teach them like there is more than high school, more than school, because sometimes they're like, oh no, I'm not planning to finish. And when you see these are opportunities that are out there, and sometimes they have no clue. Because in my case, I have a teenager, she's going to PATS, that's one of our professional technical schools. And when she was deciding, I'm like, she didn't even know the school existed. So if we create more awareness among the parents, that's when we go back to parental knowledge, like, hey, they don't know that we have these services. Probably when the parents know, they're like, you know what? They continue instilling that in the kid. And at the end, they're going to say, okay, let's see, these are opportunities. But you as a parent, go with your kid. Y estos son oportunidades que hay para los padres, para que lo puedan hacer con los estudiantes. Todos estos recursos, educar a los padres para que los padres puedan seguir, como lo hice yo con mi hija, que está ahora en uno de los programas técnicos.
So my my career path is somewhat non-traditional. I went to college initially at a community college and got hired by that college, and then I went into industry shortly thereafter. I didn't ever go back and finish my education until 2020. And in 2020, I got a bachelor's degree, and then I got a master's degree I was able to do that at an accredited college, and I did it in 5 weeks. People's path to getting education is is going to be unique to them. There is no set playbook by which a student continues education throughout their life. It's critical, though, that they understand some of those soft skills that Dylan mentioned, like showing up to work on time. I think if we were to do one benefit for our children on getting them prepared, it would be give them a class on how to apply for a job, how to keep a job, how to address your boss, how to shake hands in an interview. Those are the skills that our students are not equipped with because they didn't have good examples in the home, in some cases, on how to do that. So we need to focus on some of that and just give them those initial soft skills that will help them get employed.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. And I have one last question for the night before we do the closing statements. But before that, I know that there's a person in the audience who would like to ask a question. Dr. Martin Levert.
Thank you. First of all, again, on the microphone, this is a selfish question, being the executive director of Florida Technical College and just hearing what all of you had to say about technical education. So the question is similar to yours, Marcos, but there's a variance here. And I wrote it down because I want to be clear. Given the critical role of technical education in preparing students for the workforce, if you were voted into office, how would you actively encourage and support K through 12 students to consider and continue their education in a technical college?
And I believe that we're starting with Mr. Renzo.
So again, I think it's making sure that we're increasing their early opportunities to be exposed to those things. I mentioned automotive at St. Cloud High School, making sure that we have other programs that are being developed throughout our district. We shouldn't be taking away technical training. We should be increasing it. It's ever more evident in the economy that those industries are booming, and there's a high demand for plumbers and electricians and people to cut hair and all of those types of things. Those are very, very important. And I think it's just part of making sure that if I was elected as a school board member, that those things are being spoken from the microphone to say, like, that is not a second-rate future. That is a first-rate future to have that pathway. It's not less than a four-year university or a contingency plan. It's a great plan. It's something to be celebrated. And so that's what I would try to do if I was elected to the school board.
Ms. Garcia?
I always say that sometimes people see, okay, a bachelor's degree will bring you some money, but sometimes a technical career gives you more. And we have to give them that opportunity. They love when you talk about this. And when you compare and give them that opportunity and you talk in the classes, I used to teach learning strategies. So we provided them all the resources that were out there for them to study. It can be a technical career, it can be college. We basically offered them and talk about it. That's what we need to do. Also, parents, we need our parents to same thing again. If I'm elected, I'm definitely going to bring those workshops to my area in the way that the parents are aware of what services are out there and the colleges that are out there. Me encantaría que si soy electa, definitivamente traería estos programas técnicos, que a veces los programas técnicos traen más dinero que en un salario que a veces hasta ir a la universidad, no es que vamos a coger uno menos que el otro, pero exponer esas oportunidades a los estudiantes y desde pequeños ya decirles, mira, tienes todo esto para ti como oportunidades para estudios y para tu futuro.
So I'm going to ask you a question back. What level of involvement are you prepared to have to get exposure to these students in your school?
I think that's an excellent question. My level of involvement is I am on 3 different boards here in Osceola County. I'm the chair of the Hispanic Business Coalition. I'm the chair of the Coalition's Council of Osceola Chamber, and I sit on the board for Osceola Chamber. We also are trustees at the Hispanic Chamber of Metro Orlando. I say this because with those partnerships come with the ability for our students to become more recognized in the community and have more partnerships with employers. Because at the end of the day, at technical college, it's about employment. It's about gainful employment, to be specific, because that's a term, because of our tax status, we're actually held accountable to. So what gainful employment means for our students is that when they graduate, they're not just working, they're working in the field that they borrowed money from the federal government, and they're making a wage that allows them to pay back their student loan obligations and cover the cost of living. That's what we're held accountable to at FTC, and we're really proud of that. But that's what I do, is to make sure that my students have an opportunity to be out in the community, whether it's culinary, whether they're cooking breakfast for the homeless, whether it's my barbering students doing free haircuts. It's all about exposure for them, which is a big reason why I have you here today, right? Because me offering this room up for you guys, it's not about me, it's not about FTC. It's about the 1,400 students, and I want them to become aware, because most of their children go to school in Osceola County.
So I appreciate your response there. You know, again, I come from a background where the local community college was heavily invested in technical programs, and they sent instructors around to the individual schools and engage with the students. When the students could see what the programs were, when they could understand what the programs would benefit them, it was really easy to sell that to the students. Whether it was a nursing program, whether it was automotive, whether it was a wood shop program, whether it was welding, students could actually physically touch and engage with those instructors, and then they saw value. You know, again, I'll say it again. There's nothing that's more engaging than hands-on learning. And if you're willing to invest in sending instructors out to engage with the students, to help them understand what programs are available and how that's going to benefit them, I think you can encourage more students to go into the trades.
Thank you. Mr. Melendez?
Thank you. Yeah, the Osceola County recently passed the Prosper program about a couple years ago, and that was to pay for college for anyone graduating from our high schools. But one thing that we made sure that was included was the tech program, because everyone thinks Osceola Prosper is just Valencia College. It includes Osceola Technical College as well. I know that's not exactly what an FTC may want to hear, but just letting you know that at the school district level, we're trying to promote the technical schools as well. What I would like to see with FTC is them dual enrolling with us as well. Because I mentioned earlier, I don't know if FTC actually dual enrolls, because we do dual enroll with, you know, again, Embry-Riddle, with University of Florida, with Valencia, and even UCF. I would like to see a dual enrollment program where you guys have like a more advanced knowledge. Maybe we take the, let's say it's a 4-level class. I'm just saying maybe level 1 and level 2 is taking at the high school, then level 3 and level 4 get taken here at FTC as a continuum of the program that already exists. And so that's what we can do. They're basically articulation agreements between the schools, and we'll be more than happy. And here's another thing I thought about too. Sometimes we're short teachers. What if they could teach at both? I would love to have a memorandum of understanding of that. What if you have an awesome teacher, let them teach the first 2 periods on our campus, promote FTC's quality educators, then come back over here. And because especially, you know, these electives are not taught all throughout the day. A lot of times you have an automotive class, it's in the morning. I mean, it could be all day, but if you're short teachers, what if we can start having a teacher exchange program? And that's really where you have a strong collaboration between the government and us.
Thank you. Mr. Russell?
I was first.
You were first.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
All
I'm
good.
getting late tonight. So we're running out of time.
Yes.
And I do want to leave time for your, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a choice of answering 1 of 2 questions. They were on that way we get to 2 important questions that are left in one round. Okay. So the first one is, back in my days in the 90s, there was a big problem in the schools, in the public schools, with counseling. The counselors were sort of teachers who didn't want to be in the classroom and kind of got the counseling degree to get out of the classroom and get paid a little bit more. And then the commitment of those counselors to a huge number of students in these huge schools like we have here, we have in any city, right? Is just not enough counselors for the students. So you have on 2 ends a limitation on the counseling. And counseling is where people, families and children and students learn about the opportunities they have for the future. We work a lot with young people, and we constantly hear the complaint about my counselors don't give us any advice. They never have time for us. They don't even set up meetings for us. And when we ask them about college or any other scholarships and that sort of thing, they say, oh, you're not material for that. And that was true when I was a teacher in Chicago, and we've heard it from students here in Osceola County and Orange County. So one is, how do you solve the problem of counseling is one question. And then the next question has to do with a whole different other subject, and that is violence and violence prevention, safety in schools. This is an issue in all districts, and the vulnerability, right, to what's going on out there with so many guns and the availability of guns for people that are unstable in their mind, and unfortunately schools have become a target. But it's not just that. In some schools you hear about cops coming in and tasing students in the middle of, and sometimes it's even elementary or middle school. I've read those articles in the paper myself. So how the second question would be, how do you propose to deal with the problem of violence or violence prevention, gun violence prevention within the school system? So those two, counseling or gun violence. And we'll start with Garcia.
For the counselor part, it's so sad what you mentioned, that someone say you are not college material. And it's sad to hear it from, I don't know who was the person, but with that shortage of counselors, I think we can do a pathway from our students from high school to see how we can get them to college and look for ways to financially help them when they're interested in the counseling career. Counseling, I'll say that right now they're doing a lot of administrative things that it's less than, instead of doing the counseling portion, helping the student with aptitude tests and all that, they're doing a lot of administrative things. And if we can take away a little bit of that so they can focus more in what their job is. I'm a school counselor. That's what I went to school for. And it's very difficult because when I was back in Poinciana High, we wanted to help the student with other and help them, place them in college. But we were doing also the schedule. We were scheduling the students in different classes, changing classes. So we couldn't help them in that way. The other part with the violence, I'll say that right now
One or the other.
one of the others. Oh, okay.
But your
then-
time is
running out
up
of time.
anyway, so we're good. We're
okay.
closing up.
Perfect.
Unfortunately, we can't stay all night talking. These are all
Okay.
interesting subjects. Probably could have had a conversation about any of these questions for an hour. But Mr. Bennett.
So I think those two questions though are somewhat related.
Okay.
If we look at counseling, and I'll address that as the one question, it comes down to making sure that we've got the right training for the right people. Not everybody is nurturing. You can't step into that role with the wrong attitude and the wrong personality and expect that you're going to be effective and that you're going to be inspiring and that you're going to be engaging with children. So I think part of it's vetting, making sure that we have the right staff members. The next portion of it is, again, like you said, making sure that they have the open ability in their day to actually do their job and to focus on those kids. It could be career counseling, it could be family issues at home, it could be anything that's troubling them. But if we have somebody who's engaged, who has the time to address issues with these students, I think you'll see the violence go down as well.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr.
Yeah,
Melendez.
the school district receives a specific allocation called mental health. It's done by the state of Florida that has to be spent on that. And it's very unfortunate that I brought it up at one of the last board
What do
meetings.
you mean by that?
It's unfortunate
No,
because,
no. By
Oh,
spent
me-
on that.
yeah, mental health allocation can only be spent on mental health. So you can't take the mental health money and use it to build a new school. So it's a money that's earmarked specifically for that reason. And this year they found out that there's going to be a surplus. I said, how can you have a surplus? We just have, because I sit on safety and security committee that I created after the SRO task force. We showed data that there's a high incident of suicide, ideation throughout our students throughout the district. I mean, everywhere. And it was like the number one incident, even before bullying. I said, wait a second, you got these students contemplating suicide. You know, whether or not they follow through with it is another story. The fact that you just have that, use our mental health counselors to get allocated for that. So right now we're actually sitting on a reserve of money that I just need I need 2 more board members to agree with me to use that funding to be able to use it for its intended purpose. You know, so we have students that are struggling, and what's happening is we need to hire more people because one counselor gets assigned to 3 or 4 schools. So if we can look at the data and see that this school right here is having trouble with more suicide issues than others, rotate that person to that school and use that extra allocation to hire more people. So maybe the 3 schools that need to be rotated are the ones with the least amount of incidents, because some schools have more. But don't forget, it's a fluctuating issue, because what happens one day can happen somewhere else, because a student could get into a car accident and just causes a nasty tragedy that goes down the sign. I'm looking at my time frame. I got much more to talk about, but I think using the mental health allocation for its for is very important.
Thank you, Mr. Melendez. Mr. Rizzo.
So I think both of these issues are fundamentally a staffing issue, but I'll address the violence one. So I think when we think of violence in schools, we think of, you know, the tragedies that we've seen over the past, you know, couple of decades. And I think we are continuously trying to make our schools safer from external threats with single entry campuses, with making sure that there are SROs on campus, and collaborating with our police department and our sheriff's department. So I want to address the SRO aspect of it. I think it's very important for us to make sure that our students and our SROs are building relationships, and so that our students can see that the police officers are there as an ally to them, not somebody there that's there to hurt them or somebody they need to be afraid of. That's number one. Number two, we need to make sure that, to get back to making sure we're building relationships with our students to the point where they feel like there is someone on campus that has their back, that cares about them, at least one person. Hopefully they feel like all of their teachers do and all of the counselors do. Because ultimately, I think our biggest threat for violence is not necessarily an external threat. And I'm not talking necessarily about gun violence, but just students being violent toward other students. And that's more likely to happen in a class that has 34 kids in it than if there's 25. So it's just a matter of, is there a crowd that's manageable for an adult in that room? And we need to make sure that that is always the case.
Thank you very much. And so we're going to wind down now, and I want to thank everyone who's been watching online about this program that we have tonight. Candidates all running for seats in the Osceola School. So thank all of you who've been watching online. Thank you all who've been here in the audience. Thank you to those who made questions. It makes the conversation a lot more interesting. And also thank each and every one of you for this very insightful conversation that we've had here tonight. We're going to end with the closing statements. And like we began on this end and down this way, we're going to start now with Mr. Bennett and move our way in the opposite direction. So Mr. Bennett.
So first off, thank you. Thank you for providing the forum. Thank you for providing the facility. We really appreciate that. I just want to do the right thing for our kids. You know, I'm not trying to have an additional political career. I'm not trying to influence the government in any other way. I got asked to run for a different office, and I said my interest and my role lies with my kids. And that's where I'm interested in participating in government right now. Again, I don't owe any money to anybody. I've self-funded this whole thing. I don't need the salary. I don't need any benefits that go along with it. I just want our kids to be safe. I want our kids to get a quality education. And I want to make sure that we're accountable to that education and the money that's being spent. You know, we all take a look at our pocketbooks every month, and we know that a lot of families are month-to-month participants in their finances. But you know, our property tax is a big portion of what goes out of people's pockets. It's always a big chunk of our rent if we're a renter that's covering that. And we've we've failed our students in making sure that money is being appropriately spent on them in the right ways. It's a great place to live. I haven't been here for multiple generations, but I do love it here. And I have a strong affinity for the students in this county, and again, for the marginalized and the disenfranchised students. I'm very much an ally, because I've fought with them. For parents who are fighting with the district over special needs students and ESE needs. I'm there. I've done it.
Thank you. Thank you. Carla, please, 2 minutes. Betsaida?
I want basically to use my lifelong experience in education and make our school great. And the other thing I always say, I'm genuine. I have worked in this community for the last 23 years, and I invested everything in my community, not just only working for the Board of County Commissioners, also for the Sheriff's Office. I remember when I was working for the Sheriff's Office, we were the one who put all the SROs in the schools. We work on that, and that's why safety is my priority. I've been teaching safety and self-defense classes for the last 20 years in this community, in churches, everywhere, wherever they request with my nonprofit. And for me, it's just saving a life. I'm in the business of saving lives, and I want to continue doing that. And the other one, and I will say, for me, I speak from my heart. It's just, I want to give back. I know that this is a calling, y ahora lo voy a decir en español. Mi llamado ha sido servir y salvar vidas. Lo he hecho por los pasados 23 años en esta comunidad. Recuerdo cuando trabajaba con la oficina del sheriff, que implementamos lo que era los SROs en las escuelas. Tuvimos que trabajar fuerte para conseguir esos espacios, y allá era relacionista público de la oficina del sheriff. Y la seguridad siempre ha sido mi prioridad. Entre dar clases de seguridad, defensa personal, creo que nuestros niños se merecen estar seguros. Y no solamente de todo lo que está sucediendo, también abuso sexual, maltrato y todas esas cosas. Tenemos que proteger a nuestros niños. Y por eso es que lo hago, porque amo a mi comunidad.
So first off, thank you so much for having this forum. It's a privilege to be here. And I also just want people to understand that sometimes when people are running for office, I think people are always asking the question, it's like, are they going to do what they say they're going to do? Are they going to actually back up what they say? And what I would say, if you're questioning that about me, is just look at what I've been doing already. It's not a matter of, it is a matter of what I'm going to do, but the proof is that I have been advocating for our teachers and staff over the last 6 years as a union representative and as a member of the bargaining team. I understand that the well-being of our students is directly linked to the well-being of our staff. And the reality is we have improved, but we still have 144 teacher vacancies in Osceola County. And that is the biggest barrier to our students' success. And our highest aim should be student achievement. And I don't say that as a slogan. I say that because sometimes I wonder when we look at all the things that our school district does, and we are part of economic development of Osceola County. We have a lot of things that our county provides the community, but the most important thing happens at a student's desk. And our budget needs to reflect that. It needs to be student-centric and school site-centric. And we should not be increasing allocations at district office while we're cutting allocations at a school site. And we should also make sure that as board members, that we are setting an example for the students that are in our school district, for our community members. And I know that, I mean, if you've watched board meetings, sometimes it can get a little bit chaotic. And then also, sometimes we've had board members who might not take action when action needs to be taken. And I just want the voters of Osceola County, and specifically District 5, to know we do not have to choose between chaos and inaction. There is somewhere in the middle there. We can make changes, and we can do it in a respectful and responsible way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renzo. Mr. Melendez.
Education is the ultimate equalizer to move students from a lower economic system to one of prosperity. And I want all students, just like my son who attends public schools, to have the best opportunities possible. And that is something that we take to heart. You know, I'm one of those early board members that attends every single graduation. I even go to the Department of Juvenile Justice, and those kids, there's a graduation ceremony of 1 or 2 that are in jail and still graduate. They deserve a second opportunity and a success in life. And that's what drives me. Everyone knows that I'm the passionate board member. I'm the one that goes to different expulsion hearings, because at one point there was talk about the board just hiring somebody else as third parties to deal with our expulsion hearings. No, you got to do the good and the bad. I learned so much about issues with students getting kicked out of school as I did during the graduation ceremony. We're able to support staff. We created the SRO task force. You know, I got the like what Dylan mentioned earlier, that the police officers shouldn't be seeing students only when they're in trouble. They need to be mentors. They need to be coaches. Those were something that I did. I set up the ESC committee. We had students with special needs that were just getting left out, as Mr. Bennett said. And at the last board meeting, I forced it back on the agenda. And then nobody wanted to sit on it. So I was like, okay, I'll go ahead and volunteer. I'm that person that leads from the front. And a lot of times I'm the person that also looks at the dollar signs. The reality is we buy software by the bundle, and we don't always look at the return on investment. If it's not improving student access, we're going to get rid of it. I was the board member that did that. We have a banking committee that looked at a contract that doesn't expire. We actually have a contract with the investment company that does not expire. And I was like, wait a second, we need to go out there and RFP it. The threat of the RFP, the company came back and says, no, we're going to reduce the fees. So I'm the one that got the fees reduced. So I'm the one that's going to be a passionate advocate for every aspect, from student development to business operations to working with others, because even when I get on that board, I don't even know how I'm going to vote sometimes because I have an open mind. And that's what I told Dylan and everybody else that's running, that when you have me as a fellow board member, you're going to have every opportunity to influence me and not by special interest.
Thank you, Mr. Melendez. And with that, we conclude tonight's conversation. And please, a round of applause for all the candidates. And we'll see you next time. Next week's program has been moved to a different date, and we don't have that date yet. So we look for us in the social media and find out when the next forum is going to be. Thank you all for watching online, and thank everybody for being here tonight.